winding down and all the other stuff. We're having our next, this current May Physics and Astronomy Sea Change webinar. It'll be uploaded to YouTube. You'll get an email after the fact. But I know you're all here to learn some fabulous stuff from the Societies Consortium on Sexual Harassment in STEM with 2 M's. And I will leave it to our wonderful speakers.
Thank you, Alexis, and hi, everyone. I'm Jamie Lewis-Keith, a partner at EducationCounsel, which with the American Association for the Advancement of Science, the Association of American Medical Colleges, and the American Geophysical Union, is a co-originator of the Societies Consortium on Sexual Harassment in STEM, with 2 M's to include medical fields. EducationCounsel also serves as the consortium's policy and law advisor and senior administration. Previously, I was the first primary inside counsel at MIT and the vice president, general counsel, and university secretary to the president and board at University of Florida. So most of my career has been in-house at universities. I'm here with my colleagues, Dr. Yvette Seger, FASEB's Director of Science Policy, who is a member of the consortium's governance board and has been a leader in the consortium since its inception, and Lisa Battalia, who has been a key contributor and partner on the EducationCounsel consortium team from the start. Lisa was in the Office of General Counsel at the U.S. Department of Education, working with the Office of Civil Rights earlier in her career. Today, we're really delighted to be here to provide an overview of the consortium and some of its key resources, including 2 field-facing initiatives that may be of particular interest to you. The Societies Consortium's mission recognizes that in addition to elevating inclusive, ethical, and equitable conduct, climate, and culture in their own operations and activities, societies have a special role as standard setters for excellence in their fields. They have substantial influence on faculty, researchers, practitioners, postdocs, and others who care about being recognized by their societies and whose conduct creates the climate and culture in the fields. Societies have the influence to define excellence as requiring high quality in the work produced, as well as high standards of conduct in the way the work is done, welcoming a diversity of people and proactively rejecting sexual, gender, and racial, as well as other harassment and discrimination. That's what it takes for excellence in contributions and to earn public trust and demonstrate integrity in the fields. The consortium had an extraordinary 100 inaugural society members in its first 3 months back in 2019. And now in its 14th year, not 14th, 4th year, with members, I don't want to get too ahead of myself.
It feels like 14.
It feels like 14. With membership remaining open, we have over 120 society members representing a broad range of STEM fields. The National Academy's June 2018 report on sexual harassment of women in academic, science, engineering, and medicine provides a research basis for the commitment that all of our members make to transform their fields toward inclusion and equity for talent. In addition to looking internally at their own policies and practices, our members focus on the consortium's ability to have collective impact on the fields. The board and all of our members are STEM societies. And you can see AAAS, AAMC, and AGU as the sponsoring societies, and others that are serving, have been serving from the beginning of the consortium and will have some rotation. Our leadership council, which collaborates with EducationCounsel on the development of consortium resources to assure high value to our members, is also comprised of our society members. But we also have a standing advisory council of leaders from higher education, academic research, and academic medicine institutions and organizations who work with the consortium on initiatives aimed at impact on the fields broadly. Major sustained change toward equity and inclusion cannot be achieved by any one sector of STEM, but requires collaboration across the sectors where faculty, research staff, and trainees work, learn, and have impact. All of our work is on a parallel track, but these tracks are related. One track creates resources that establish inclusive conduct expectations in the relative short term, and the other track focuses on community building initiatives, emphasizing engagement and action to drive climate and culture change in the mid to longer term. That's the harder work. We have been highly prolific in producing resources and activities in our first 3 years. And while our resources are currently available generally to our consortium members, if you are a member of a consortium society, then you too can have access to the resources through your society. A working group of standing and ad hoc advisory council members from higher education and societies is advising the consortium's development of the first field-facing initiative that I'm going to highlight today. And that is the Sexual, Gender, and Racial Misconduct Flag Sharing System, which will be available to institutions as well as societies. This tool is still in design and development, but we are working toward a pilot anticipated later this year. Higher education, societies, and research entities that voluntarily participate in the flag sharing system would collectively take positive leadership action, which is more easily done together than alone, to address long-standing inequities that are being further amplified by the demands of our times. Flag sharing would increase the availability of a basic fact that can help to reduce unwittingly passing or honoring harassers, to protect people from abuse, advance a healthy and inclusive climate, reduce enterprise risk overall, and achieve efficiencies in all of the above. For the greatest effect, the flag sharing system aims to maximize voluntary participation by a large number of societies and institutions, as well as other research entities, in a system that covers misconduct's impacts on climate and opportunity in multiple professional settings where a person may act, while also minimizing legal concerns that can serve as an impediment to sharing information. The flag sharing system will provide a tool. It is not a uniform policy for participating entities, and it would not create a central shame list or a central misconduct record repository. If a person's society, institution, or employer under its own independent policy and process makes a finding, however it defines finding, of a covered generic type of sexual, gender, or racial misconduct, which are the main focus, or if it makes a finding of research or financial misconduct, the basic fact that there has been a finding against a person of a covered generic type of misconduct would be made available through the flag sharing system to any participating entity in flag sharing that requests the information. We are developing a tool that would facilitate expansion of available information to participating entities relating to a range of their decisions that affect climate, such as hiring, leadership, governance, committee service, and honors, as well as possibly even who should serve in mentoring and supervisory roles. 3 design baselines support maximum participation and minimum legal risk in an ethical manner. First is obtaining consents to disclosure. Second is limiting the content of disclosure to a useful fact that is significant as well as hard to dispute. And third is preserving participating entities' independence in policy and decision-making. Disclosure is tied to findings of serious misconduct. Societies confirm many privileges and honors. So as a condition to a person being considered at any time for society privileges, leadership, and honors, participating societies could encourage their individual members to voluntarily join them as leaders by providing upfront, not incident or decision-tied consent to disclosure of any findings that may arise through the flag sharing system. Consents would not be tied to basic membership. And if not already voluntarily given, any participating society, institution, or research entity could require such consent as a condition to a person qualifying for employment, honors, privileges, governance, leadership, or possibly mentoring roles at the time when the entity is actually making those decisions. But whenever and by whomever a consent is obtained, the consent to disclosures would be effective for 10 years. And the consent would run to all of a person's affiliated membership, employing, and professional entities, not just to the entity that obtains the consent. So that any entity affiliated with a person will receive consent to provide disclosures, making it easier for all of them to disclose findings of covered generic types of misconduct at any time during the consent's 10-year effective period. But the recipient of a disclosure will always be an entity that is participating in the flag sharing system and makes a request. All misconduct and disclosure records would remain in the sole custody of the entity that made the finding. The entity would make a completed flag sharing disclosure form available for secure viewing by the flag sharing participating entity that asks for it. So it's really an ability to view that disclosure form, which is really just a check the box around generic types of misconduct. Importantly, it would be made clear that there is no joint policy or decision making. The flag sharing system would preserve the independence of each participating entity regarding its own conduct policies and how it defines finding, when and for what decisions it seeks disclosures, whether when it receives a disclosure, it requires detailed incident information with further consent, which would be outside of the flag sharing system and may not be necessary in many cases, and what action, if any, it decides is warranted if a finding is disclosed. The serious misconduct findings that the flag sharing system's field-wide disclosures cover, which include the year of the finding, and a discussion with the person at issue, would often alone provide adequate information to inform most decisions, with minimal effort and risk for both the disclosing and the receiving entities. An entity may decide to continue to consider a person for a role despite the existence of a finding and may require more information. That's their policy and their discretion. Getting full files often isn't easy or fast, however, and sometimes it isn't even possible when there is a consent. But an entity can use its other disclosure policies to try when it thinks that that is needed. In any event, the flag sharing system would increase the likelihood that the basic multi-sector information that's critical for decision-making will be shared when it's requested. And the flag sharing system and other disclosure policies are complementary. They are not and, they are and not or propositions. We will come back hopefully to this group and others with further details as we make progress in the development of the flag sharing system and work toward a pilot that again, we hope to launch later this year. So with that, I'm going to turn this over to my colleague, Lisa Battalia, to talk about the second field-facing initiative. Lisa, I think you're on mute.
There we go. Hello, everyone. I'm going to talk about our second field-facing initiative, and by that we mean that many of our resources are available only to our members, but this is something that will be available beyond that to institutions of higher education, societies, and you know, very likely beyond that as well. Our case studies library is going to include, as you can see here, these umbrella topics: incidents at conferences, incidences during conferences but off-site, incidences during field work, laboratory work, remote places, incidences in the medical field where rough speech is become the norm, incidences involving people who bring, you know, stars, research, money, prestige that are considered too big to fail and often get away with things, incidences involving structural inequity. So a case that does not focus on a particular bad actor, but a series of structural, cultural, institutional barriers to equity and inclusion. And then, of course, some success stories showing what works. And some of that will be throughout the case studies because we're always looking to highlight ways that the positives as well as things that go wrong. Our goals in creating the case study library was we were looking to create a tool, a resource, a tool that could focus on positive ways to prevent and also navigate in the moment, which is often necessary, difficult situations that occur, unfortunately, sometimes in very common places like society meetings, and then also in places that are somewhat unique and have particular challenges like a field work or an isolated laboratory settings. As well as cases where the perpetrator of the conduct is, as I said, a star, brings research funding and seems somehow too powerful to be held accountable. And while these case studies are intended for use by a range of people designing policies, people investigating, people responding, we intended and have put a very particular focus and sensitivity towards vulnerable populations, students, postdocs, early career professionals, whose needs are often discounted, by the field. Next slide. Much like with the flag sharing system, we worked with a working group of advisory council members. Those are people who are not members of our society because they don't work for, not members of consortium because they don't work for society. But as you can see, these are professionals with very high level roles in higher education. With this group, particularly involved with students and early career professionals. And they have been super helpful in making sure that our case studies are based in reality. Fortunately or unfortunately, when you'll see some of the incidences that we recount in the case studies, we reached out to students, graduate students, society members to ensure that the case studies, though they are anonymized, they are based on real life situations. This is our summary of the first 4 case studies that we will have fully operational very shortly. We've used clever names, as you can see, but they are, but they're not meant to be, they're not clever situations. They're real situations that happen, unfortunately. The case studies are designed to help people in a wide range of roles identify, we often say, walk in the shoes of people in these roles. The way the case studies are designed, each case study starts with facts. The facts will be divided up in parts as you move through the scenario, which we're hoping will be useful as people use the case studies to sort of manage how they want to sort of attack a particular case study. For each part, each factual part, there will be some pause, just a few pause and reflect questions. And that's intended to help encourage initial thinking as you go through the case studies. In part 2, there will be discussion of what happened or should have happened and didn't happen, key lessons learned from that set of facts. That will be followed by something very important, some specific, concrete, suggested action steps for an higher education, institution of higher education or society to either prevent or remedy harm in the future. Particularly useful, we believe, are that each action item will be accompanied by specific references to Societies Consortium resources, because we've really developed quite a package of resources that will, either be a model or a guide for that particular issue, and that's identified right there. So that's the basic part of a case study. So those will be separate documents for each case study, those 2 parts unique to that document. Applicable to all the case studies will be a separate additional complementary document that can be used across all 3. That document will have a section with a facilitator's guide. So we really try to provide some help and guidance on how to approach your role as a facilitator if you were doing that. A checklist, but with some really significant detail of key elements of an effective policy, effective actions that societies can take. Also some action steps for individual learners and some national support services for individuals who might be examining these case studies, recognizing that, unfortunately, in many cases, people who are targets of harassment can't always find any or at least all of the resources that they will need to manage the fallout of an incident. The case studies can be used, as my discussion implies, the case studies we're hoping will be used by individuals that they can go through and focus on steps that an individual can take, particularly how an individual could navigate such a situation. And then we also expect the case studies to be used in a group learning session with a facilitator, and that may have a focus more on what societies can do, what institutions of higher education can do to prevent, learn from this case study, to remedy and prevent future harm. And in those contexts, individuals will also be able to get guidance in that, as you go through the groups breaking up into parts and going through various shoes that people would walk in and try to consider from different perspectives, which can be a very, very effective tool. And that's the case studies. Well, I'm going to, yes, I'm going to turn it over to Yvette.
And Yvette, before you jump in, let me just make one other point about the case study, since this is that was great, Lisa, and I can't wait for us to be able to share some of these case studies. But I just wanted to make the point that one thing that really sort of elevates in my mind as I look at these case studies, and I hope that will be the case when you all get to see them as well, is just this notion of the intersectionality of all the sectors of STEM, that you know, the kinds of when something bad happens at a society or in an institution, it affects other settings. It's not just that one setting, and the way that, and so all of these case studies really address how each of these groups, the institution, the society, the individual, how they can react and either make things better or worse. And
the roles and the players in it will, you know, it's obvious where that happens, because the players in these things have multiple roles. You'll go to a, you know, we'll have a character that goes to a meeting, and the person who's, you know, heavily involved in the meeting is also involved at their university, considering them for a job back there. And those you know, it's very common, these multi-level roles that people are playing in this process in multiple places, and having an impact in all of those places, and how to deal with that. Good point, Jamie. All right, Yvette.
All right, no, and it's really exciting to hear about these two initiatives, the flag sharing system and the case studies, and seeing them come to fruition. But we thought it would also be helpful to talk a little bit about existing consortium resources. We find that it's always good to have a refresher, because I think, and I can say this as somebody who's been really involved with the consortium from the get-go, they've been very prolific in terms of the team in producing documents that are available. And sometimes you might just need some help knowing which document you might be wanting. So we wanted to highlight 4 specific resources. And the way I'm going to do this is we have, as you can see, screenshots on slides. And then I will, after I go through the slides and give you the high level overview, I'll just at least show you on the website. So Jamie mentioned at the beginning that, you know, if your society is a member of the consortium or you're directly affiliated, you might already have a login, or you might want to get one after I show you all the resources that are on the website. So I will start with, you know, all these resources that we're showing you today. They focus on the fact that this is a journey, and this is something that we talk about in the consortium quite a bit, that it's not a competition, that we're all on the path to addressing sexual harassment in STEM. And, you know, some people might be further down the road, others might just be at the beginning of their journey, but the point is that you need to start the journey. And in fact, it doesn't matter that you might be further down the road, you might have taken a wrong turn somewhere and you might need to take a step back. And so the first one is, as you can see, we definitely took this roadmap to heart. This is, whenever you hear us talk about the roadmap, this outlines the 3 stages of the journey. You know, the first step, starting somewhere. Second, choosing your own adventure, like, oh my gosh, how did I get this far? And then the last step is changing the culture and building the community. You know, as I mentioned, you can do them either sequentially or in tandem. And when we look at the document on the web, it's not just this map. It has accessory documents that go with each stage of the journey. And I will show you this live because there is a lot more than what you're seeing on the slide. The second step that's associated, and this is attached to the roadmap, and I'll show you this live after we go through the slides, is the 5-step slide guide. Say that 10 times very quickly. But this is really designed to for those who are just at the beginning of their journeys, even before they have robust policies. Again, the importance is making sure that you start somewhere. And sometimes you just don't know what step 1 is. And I know we've heard this from a lot of are smaller societies in the consortium that they're just like, I want to do something, but oh my gosh, there's so much that we could do. And so the purpose of the 5-step guide is to just help them figure out, okay, what should I tackle first? And so even though there are those high levels, there are steps. So, you know, you can go through, and it's 5 steps. We like to name our documents with clear names in the consortium. So it walks you through each step to go through the different stages of the journey. At each step, there's also all the Society Consortium resources that are available that can help you. You can choose to engage all of them, some of them, as you go through. It's just, we recognize that each of our societies, even though they're all in STEM, they might have different needs in different communities. So you can see I'm just doing the screenshots and bringing up the animation of what the different steps look like. You have the step, and then you have some of the key actions that you can take. And, you know, here's just a summary of the different steps of the 5-step slide guide. And, you know, just our priorities as we develop these resources. Sorry, I'm trying to manage too many documents at once. So the third document is the Vision, Outcomes, and Research Flyer, which you can see here. This is a PDF on the website. So this is a companion document specifically focused on societies and meant to complement the document produced by the National Academy's Action Collaborative focused on institutions. So you have the actions that can be taken by institutions. This focuses on what societies can do. The flyer outlines the objectives, key actions for desired outcomes, and the research basis for actions with impact that should be the focus of organizations seeking to advance inclusion and equity. And a lot of our societies have found this resource to be very helpful as they talk to their boards with justifications. It's colorful, so it's engaging, even though there are a lot of words. But, you know, it's also a good highlight of some of the key early pieces of the consortium's work. And then the last piece, and this is just more than one item, and you'll see it on the website. So, you know, I've highlighted 3 specific documents that you can go to, but there is really just this great compendium of resources that is an interactive and topically organized collection of resources. This includes articles, research, policies, toolkits, initiatives, resource centers, consultants, and leaders in the field, you name it. It's like the phone book of everything Societies Consortium. And it's created by the consortium, created by our members, for our members. We have a series of webinars, hot topic webinars, and it'll be like, oh, we have this great resource. And the first thing that the consortium team will do is say, hey, can you give us the information to add to the compendium? And so it's really a nice complement to everything that the Education Council team has developed on behalf of the Societies Consortium to really reflect what our societies are doing, because then it makes it seem really attainable to our individual members, like, oh, hey, I can build on this model that somebody else used. The compendium is publicly available, but the public version does not have the consortium created resources. So the first few resources that I showed you. And I will go ahead, I'm going to stop the share on the slides right now and take you directly to the website so that you can see all these things. So please be patient with me while I do a slight screen swap. All right, so I need to, it seemed like a good idea the first time I practiced it, but you know, there's always a challenge. I'm not going to do that.
Well, while you're doing that, I'll just mention that on the 5-step slide guide, as Yvette said, it is intended for those who are just starting out, but it has in it the kinds of things that everybody should have, regardless of where you are on the journey. And so it's one of those things, it's a really good touch point and I think it's one of those things that if you're able to have access to it, could be useful to departments and institutions as well.
All right, so I had to shut PowerPoint. So there's going to be a little lag when I go back to you, Jamie, but I promise I will not let you down. But hopefully now you see my web screen Full disclosure, I am logged in with my consortium's login, so you can see all the cool things. When you navigate to the consortium webpage, we know that there is a ton of information here. Where we are looking as we go to library, and we're looking at practical implementation tools, which is where we are here. And that roadmap that I told you about is located right here. I've opened that already in a tab. So remember, I told you that there was a lot more than just the roadmap. You literally can go through, it's a document that you can scroll through. You see step 1 starting somewhere, and here are the hyperlinks of all the resources. And oh, look, there's that 5-step slide guide. And so all of these different resources that you can link to on the Society's webpage, it's all in one place. And then as you move to step 2, again, there are more resources available once you have furthered yourself on the journey. And step 3, again, all the specific resources. So it's all laid out on the roadmap, which I think is the easiest way to introduce societies to these resources. When you get to, if you choose the roadmap at the first step, you would go to this top page to get the 5-slide guide. And this outcome vision, that very colorful brochure that I showed you on the slides, that's also accessible here. And you can see, here's your slide guide, or your 5-step guide. We used to call it a slide guide. I'm sorry for using old language, Jamie. But you can see that you can either download it or you can navigate right through the web page, and you see all the specific details of each of those things where we just gave you a snippet. And here is that vision of outcomes document. Again, you can scroll through it. There's a lot more context than what you saw on the first page. It's meant to be, you can do a front and back or a separate 2-pager. And then the last resource that I mentioned is the Compendium of Resources. And all you have to do is scroll down, and you see, like, you just open the tab. So looking at COVID-19 impact, research and resources, everything's hyperlinked. You see that, who contributed it. Anything that's in green is something that's created by the Societies Consortium. So that's members only. And asterisk resources have been used by the consortium to inform society resources, and also emanate from the National Academy's 2018 report. But all you have to do is you click on all these tabs, and you can see, like, so many resources in different areas. You can see, like, bias training and trainers, all the information is there. So really a one-stop shop.
Do you mind clicking on, like, ethics, ethics policies? Just to show, I'm just
yeah, the green. I was looking.
So
you saw
the
what I was doing.
okay.
I was looking for the green. Yes. So as I mentioned, the green font shows you some of the things that our members have developed and submitted. And if you click through all of these, you can see why there needs to be that accordion style function on the webpage, because there's a lot. And there's always more. This grows and grows and grows. And Lisa, Jamie, and I have always been giving talks highlighting the resources, and I'm always impressed by how many more things, like, oh, that's new. So highly recommend that you can, if you can log in, you can see everything. But if you can even see a lot of these resources publicly, because we understand that there are some societies that they're debating about joining the consortium or may not have the resources, but we don't want that to stop them from going on their journey to preventing harassment in their field or serving as standard bearers. So
Yvette, would you mind for 1 second, if it's not too complicated, going back to the 5-slide guide?
The live version?
The live version.
The live version. Okay, yes. For you, I will do anything.
Thank you.
All right, so we are going to 5-slide guide. Here we go.
So just keep scrolling there. So here's step 2. So, but this is important. After each step, there's a page like this, which is resources. And again, everything's hyperlinked. And this is sort of suggested. This is even done in an order, sort of an order in which you may want to go through, a suggested order in how you might want to use the resources. So just wanted to make sure you realize, so, in every place, there's both the information, the useful, the policy, the guidance, the recommendations, the how you might want to think about this, plus always resources to turn to with models and design elements and policy guidance to get you there.
And the best part is if you navigate to the resources from the 5-step guide, is that you don't get lost looking for them. So you are direct linked out of it. So
because all of these things are, almost everything is available in multiple places. They'll be available just under some like model policy under the library, but using both the roadmap and the 5-step guide really helps you navigate where the resources are appropriate, in what order they might be appropriate, what is most useful for particular things. So why we, with the help of the Leadership Council, which Yvette was on before she was elevated to the executive committee, like they're always with their input, like we got to make this, really user friendly, holding people's hands through this process. How can we make it more that way? So.
And I'll just say, this is our contact information. If you have questions or want to talk to us about anything. Also, I will just say, I want to make 2 points about the resources. One is that one really important resource, which we didn't show you, but is on that roadmap in step 1, and it's also in the first couple of steps of the 5-step guide, is our concrete do's and don'ts. So one of the things that happens I think with sexual and gender and other kinds of harassment is that, one person's idea of harassment is different than another person's, many times relating to what level of power you have. So this is that sort of the walking in other shoes kind of issue. And so a lot of times when we make these general pronouncements in our policies, we do not tolerate sexual harassment. It's good to have it, but it's somewhat meaningless unless it's also accompanied by concrete examples of the kinds of conduct that are harmful and exclusive, and the kinds of conduct that will be welcoming and inclusive, with some really specific examples so that people can to help people walk in other shoes. So that's one thing that I just wanted to point out. And another is that we've really highlighted the resources that are sort of tools and model policies. But one big part of the work that we do, and I know that you're doing in the Sea Change program, is really the community building. It's the opportunities to engage with others who are on the same journey, who are facing similar problems, so that you can share ideas and share experience and all those good things that can help to build a sense of community values and a community with certain conduct expectations. So I will also mention that membership in the consortium is always open, and so if you are already a member of one of the societies that is a member of our consortium, you have this access. If you're not a member, if your society is not a member of the consortium and might be interested, then this is some good contact information where you can send them to and we'd be happy to answer questions and provide more information to them.
And also that Societies Consortium email is really important if you've forgotten your password to access the website.
So we see there are no questions in the chat. Does anyone have questions about the Societies Consortium or any of these resources, or ways in which you might want to use this in your in the Sea Change work that you're all doing?
At this point, feel free to just unmute and ask, I think, right?
I don't know.
They're webinars, so they're not able to do that.
Just that's why it's typing questions in the chat or the Q&A, and I read them aloud. I actually have a question. How do you envision departments using this kind of stuff? Like some concrete things that people could do?
Yeah, well, I think that obviously with an institution of higher education is very decentralized. So I think that both institutions and departments could use these kinds of resources, because as I said, if you look at, let's say, step 1 on the roadmap, there are a lot of resources that are not necessarily big formal policies like the ones that your institution would put in their policy handbook, but really go to establishing conduct expectations and making those expectations concrete and understandable to people at all different levels and in all kinds of roles of your department. What are some of the do's? We have these little do's and don'ts charts that sometimes our societies have made into posters. I could see that might be something that could be hung up in a research lab or in a, at department meetings, that really give, and they really are real life kinds of do's and don'ts. Like when you're having a discussion or you want to ask a question, or, is it okay to comment on somebody's appearance and things like that, that may seem sort of intuitive and obvious to some people and are not necessarily intuitive and obvious to everybody. And those kinds of things can make a really big difference. I think there are also some guidance around things like, what do you do when someone doesn't meet conduct expectations? And so you will certainly have an institutional, you'll have an institutional policy that will tell you what to do. But many times, in my experience as a general counsel in large research universities, public and private, there is often sort of a first level where a department chair, needs to sort of figure out what to do in a situation. And one of the big actions that we really emphasize at all levels is this idea of community building. Discipline, when something goes wrong, you have to step back and ask yourself, what is the aim? What are you trying to achieve? And if what you're trying to achieve is an inclusive environment where everyone feels welcome and can thrive, then it's not always, sometimes, but it's not always necessary for there to be a punitive outcome. And it doesn't necessarily help to just kick somebody out and have them go somewhere else and do it again. One of the things that you need to do oftentimes is to elevate an understanding of what was the conduct that caused harm, that harm was caused, what was the conduct that caused that harm, how does an individual own the fact that they did cause harm, and how do they understand what different conduct to use so that they don't cause harm, and how do you make the target feel safe and included again. And so we have resources that talk about that sort of community building. I think those are two big things. I don't know if others have other things.
Just some of the initiatives I think that are captured in the compendium, for instance, in meetings, but they don't only apply to meetings, like initiatives to more broadly make inclusion and diversity an active part of the materials you create, the events that you host. There's some really good information in there on some initiatives that our society members have done that I could see being easily applicable to departmental functions and meetings and activities, for instance.
Great, thanks. Oh, you wanted to say something?
No, I was just gonna, it looks like someone was asking about, what do you do about people who are asking, why are we focusing on these kinds of issues as they perceive it to be an expense at the expense of science. And that goes to, that's something that societies have a very big role in, but so do institutions and departments. And it goes to the question of, how do you define merit and excellence? Is merit, are merit and excellence a function simply of how great the science is, or is it both the output, that scientific output, and the way the work is done to create that output? Because if you have the most brilliant, groundbreaking scientist in the whole world who ends up with who has a toxic lab and is driving upcoming generations and others out of the field, that is not excellent. That is harm to the field. And that's a matter of leadership. That's something that your department head and your institution really needs to, your dean needs to really focus on, and the faculty need to have a real, open and candid conversation about those things, because that's where you're building that community and values. It doesn't happen magically. It doesn't happen just because you adopt a policy. It happens because you involve all these stakeholders in the development of policy and have real, candid, and open conversations about it.
And like something like the case study can be useful, because in it, often people don't
people don't recognize the harm. In many of these cases, this type of like people just don't, whatever their experience of their life so far, they simply don't understand what's the problem, what's the harm. And if you can sometimes stand in other people's shoes or hear from people who are experiencing these and what the harm is, I think it can be very, powerful. There are some resources again in the compendium for some, consultants and different people that help to do this work and help facilitate what can be hard conversations, but we've heard can be, from our members, can be very impactful conversations in small groups, about what is happening. And there is, increasing evidence, there is a lot of studies and evidence that demonstrate harm in ways that people just haven't considered before. It just hasn't been on the radar to think about, but the evidence is there that there is harm, and we know people leave the field, and we these things can be demonstrated, and sometimes it's and just awareness. We have one member who early on in our convening, she was planning meetings, and her board was saying, why are we doing all these, diversity coffee houses, and why do we need childcare? And we don't have any problems. And they did a climate survey of their meetings, and that was very helpful in demonstrating to board leaders, we have a problem here. And it was very easy at that point, she stated, to move forward with some wonderful initiatives in their annual meetings.
And department heads, and department meetings are good opportunities sometimes to have some of these conversations. They can, there's the issue of the teachable moment when something goes wrong, but there's also the ability to have these conversations even in advance of something going wrong, even using sort of prior experience and ideas. That's how some of these case studies can help.
There's another interesting question there, Jamie. Did you see about the shift from code of conduct to code of ethics?
Yeah, I had. Do you want to say anything about that, Yvette, or do you want me? I'm happy to jump in.
Oh, that's not my area of expertise. I'm a geneticist who just knows how to use Zoom and share screen.
Yvette.
So I think that the term, I think these terms are sometimes used interchangeably. I think the reason that some entities go to code of ethics is because all the things we're talking about right now are a question of ethics, and it is sort of, that's part of the message, really, that these are not just people being sensitive. These are not just sort of rules that somebody is telling us.
Yeah, behavior rules, conduct rules. Yeah.
The inclusive conduct is actually a matter of ethics, and it's a matter of excellence in the field, and it's a matter of public trust and integrity in the field. If you want to have you want to maximize the contributions that science can have to better the world and better society and better the planet, you've got to include all talent. And the only way you can include all talent is if you create a welcome environment in which all talent can thrive. And that is a matter of integrity. It's a matter of ethics. It's something that it's sort of, there's a debate about whether sexual and gender and racial misconduct and harassment should be part of the definition of research misconduct or scientific misconduct. There's the federal definition of scientific misconduct. There are some societies that are going to that include in research misconduct all of these kinds of things because they are matters of ethics, and sort of pointing that out can have a very powerful impact on the way people think about these things. But
and sometimes we also talk about ethics and ethical and professional conduct. Right. And sometimes sometimes it's just about basic civility not to be lost in this. And again, I think that's some of the reason for the change. This is in all of the ways that you treat your colleagues in the field.
Yeah, and you're right. I think Alexis, you're right. AGU did include sexual harassment in the definition of research misconduct.
And I think I'm sure on the compendium, you can find a link to their policy and that language.
Yeah.
And so,
go ahead. No, go ahead.
I just ask another, like a kind of finalish question, because you give such fantastic responses, all of you, is how do you envision sort of people who might be interested who are working at departments besides going through the resources? Because I think quite a few people are probably part of one of the societies because you have so many. What other ways can people participate, you know, with different ways in this work?
I think that if you are interested in either having access to resources or attending things like hot topic webinars or convenings, things like that, the way to probably do that is to contact the representative of your society to the consortium. And so if there are some key societies, as I'm sure there are in physics and and astronomy, if there's some key societies that are members of the consortium, and you email us at the consortium email address, we can provide your name to the member society and ask them to respond to you with. All of our member societies get 2 logins, one for their primary representative, which is unique to them, and one that is a general login that they can lend to others who are members in their society.
And we are about to introduce an exciting new tool, a LinkedIn platform, which will make it even easier for members who are members of societies who are members to participate very directly with questions or sharing a resource that they know about or asking about resources. And that's something that will be coming soon. And if your society's not a member, we're happy to talk to anyone about the possibilities of membership and what are some of the benefits and how to engage in that. We're always open to do that.
And I'll just say, I mean, it's a fantastic network. It's supplemented not only my efforts in support of addressing sexual harassment in STEM within the Federation that I work for, but I've also been able to tap into, I have connections at societies I might not have had in other disciplines because we're all part of the consortium. So it's really a great professional development opportunity as well. And I've learned a lot of legal things that I never thought I would when I was a wee little PhD student. So I appreciate Jamie and Lisa and the rest of the Education Council team helping us navigate this space. Because I think a lot of us have come to it because we're scientists in this space and we're like, so they really do a great job walking us all through and making sure we take the right steps.
And in that vein, we've heard from our members that, this can be, this is hard work. Everyone, this is hard work. It is a long journey. It's a journey where not everyone's on the same page. And for many people, perhaps people in a department, it can be lonely work. You can sometimes feel like you're all alone in this, fighting an uphill battle. And so we've heard from members, it's very powerful because it's tiring work and it's hard work to have these peer relationships to make the journey a little bit lighter and a little bit less lonely sometimes.
Yeah, it's always so striking to hear our members just say, oh, you're having the same problem. They just don't feel alone because especially the societies with a staff of 1, they're just overwhelmed. So it's a great network.
Great, thank you. Do you have any final thoughts that you want to share? Are there any last questions?
I would just encourage everyone to realize that this is the kind of work that has its ebbs and its flows and it's very cyclical. You've got to keep, as Yvette indicated, it's a cycle. It's that you get to a certain point, but you've got to loop back again because it's a constant piece of work and keeping up your energy, taking care of yourself. Making sure that you have those relationships, across STEM fields, because even though each field is a little different, you can help each other. And I think the Sea Change program that you're all, that many of you are engaging in, is a great. It's looking at the evidence base for making priority decisions and taking priority actions. And it's the kinds of things that the consortium is developing. They are tools and resources that you can use on that journey as you do that kind of work. So all these things work together. Ed Council actually works is the legal and policy advisor to the Sea Change program too. So we feel really privileged to work on all of these kinds of things with all of our partners in this important work. Thank you so much for having us to this. And we look forward to hopefully coming back when we're ready to launch the flag sharing and the case studies.
Yeah, thank you so much everyone for attending, especially and given that it's the end of the academic year during a very turbulent academic year. I'm going to stop the recording.